Gabe, we hear a lot from the protesters' perspective, but often we don't hear much from ICE. So I'm wondering, when you spent the day with ICE agents today, what is their perspective on these raids in Minnesota?
Oh, hi there, Julie. Well, certainly it was quite the experience to be able to go along with ICE on some of these operations. I've done them before in several cities. Now this is part of what the Trump administration calls Operation Metro Surge, as you're well aware. We just heard from ICE officials that just today across this region there were more than 50 arrests, and there have been more than 400 arrests since it began on December 1st. Now, we started the day before dawn. That's how these operations typically unfold. I can say it was very difficult for the ICE agents to actually arrest their targets. There were several Somali, what ICE said were undocumented immigrants that had criminal histories that they didn't pan out. They would go to a location and either the suspect wasn't there, and then you have to move on, or the suspect was there, but it was a difficult situation to be able to make entry, either in an apartment complex, in one case where a property manager did not want them in. ICE agents, they insist that this is an enforcement operation not targeting the Somali community specifically, that it is targeting undocumented immigrants with final orders of removal. Still, critics and many protesters who we also saw today, especially during one incident this afternoon, they claim that this is indiscriminate and that the ICE agents are just going after whoever they can. I can say that they did surveil these suspects. They have for some time, and there was very targeted enforcement that we saw here throughout the day. However, this does come against a very heated environment in Washington. Just last night, the president, speaking at an event, escalated his rhetoric against Somalia. Certainly that has drawn some backlash here in this community, again from critics who feel that this operation is going too far. But of course, as you well know, and as you know from covering this community, there are many Somali immigrants here, local officials. They're an integral part of the community, and the ICE officers we spoke with did say, again, they're not targeting this community specifically. They're going after undocumented immigrants, even those without so-called lengthy criminal histories. The way they see it, if they're in this country illegally, they are breaking the law, and that has been the position of the Trump administration that we hear over and over again from White House officials back in Washington, Julie.
Well, Gabe, I'm just wondering if you talk to them all at all about what it's like for them to do this job and why they think that's important. We'd love to get their perspective because we're seldom able to get that.
Sure. Well, certainly. Look, a lot of the ICE officers, we've spoken with have been doing this for quite some time. They are law enforcement officials. They do feel that laws in this country, need to be followed, and they do feel that this administration is letting them do their jobs. They are very hesitant to comment on anything, on any policy changes in Washington. I dealt with that during the previous administration and for many years, actually. They're reluctant to comment on any of that, but they do appreciate being allowed to do their jobs. I can say that they are very frustrated by what's been happening, not just here in Minneapolis, but really across the country, this escalating tension between some members of the public and protesters who have gone, in some cases, through escalating tactics in order to block law enforcement. We were told by some ICE officers that in some cases they find those Apple AirTags placed in their vehicles so that some protesters, some activists can follow along their vehicles. Several times today we ran across some protesters who were blowing whistles in the faces of the ICE officers. And in one case, later on this afternoon, there was a situation where there were there was a crowd that started to gather and made it very difficult for some of these ICE officers to leave the scene after they had made their arrest. So there's certainly a very heated environment here that ICE officers are going and having to conduct these operations. But again, they say they are very targeted. They insist they're not targeting, they're not going after a specific community. But that's from the perspective that the ICE officers, tell me. They're very frustrated by how they've been treated by some members of the public when they're simply trying to do their jobs, Julie.
All right, we appreciate your insight. And you said they told you 50 arrests since their raid here in Minnesota starting on December 1st, is that right?
Well, actually, what we just heard from the Department of Homeland Security, more than 400 arrests here in Minnesota since December 1st. What they told me was more than 50 arrests just today. It did strike me as a high number, but I can say there were many teams here today, and there were about 100 federal agents right now as part of this operation. Certainly, it's an operation that's gotten a lot of attention across the country. A lot of backlash. Some of the protesters we saw today felt that ICE should not be in these communities, that they were targeting undocumented immigrants, that they feel that they oppose what the Trump administration is doing. But again, ICE officers do want to get it out there that they are just trying to do their jobs. They're trying to enforce the law, and they do view anyone in this country illegally as having essentially a criminal record by the fact that they came to this country illegally.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. We appreciate it.